My name's Nora Thompson. Tonight, like most nights since arriving in Monte Carlo, I found myself sitting alone at a small cafe on the edge of Casino Square. It's a far cry from the luxurious life I was born into. After graduating from an elite college in the States, all I wanted was a simple break from the world I knew. My father owns a vast empire from hotels to tech firms, but I use my mother's maiden name to keep things grounded and to avoid the spotlight. The evening had cooled when he walked in. Daniel exuded an air of ownership, or at least the confidence that comes from wearing a suit worth more than most people's rent. He pulled out the chair opposite me without asking. "Mind if I sit?" he finally said, though he was already seated. His smile was all charm, probably well rehearsed. "Looks like you're already sitting," I replied, barely glancing up from my coffee. He chuckled, his laugh too smooth. "I'm Daniel, and you are?" "Nora," I said curtly, giving him a quick once-over. Not my usual type, too polished, but admittedly good-looking. "So, Nora, what brings a girl like you to a pricey haunt like this all by yourself?" His tone was teasing, and I wasn't sure if I was amused or annoyed. "Just enjoying my coffee," I answered vaguely. "And you?" I asked. "What's your excuse?" "I could say business, but I'd be lying," he said with a smirk. "Tonight, let's just say I'm scouting for something interesting, and it looks like I might have found it." I raised an eyebrow. "Hope the coffee lives up to your expectations then." Daniel laughed. "Something tells me it's already exceeded them. I wasn't here to make friends or find a fling. Look, I'm not one of those girls who falls for lines if that's what you're aiming for. And I'm certainly not interested in whatever game you're playing." "Who says I'm playing a game?" he asked, his voice lowering slightly. "Experience," I replied. "You sit down uninvited, start with a line. What, do you expect a phone number or a date?" He leaned back, genuinely amused now. "You're tough. I like that. Not looking for a number, just conversation. But if it's too much, just say the word, and I'll vanish." I considered him for a moment. Monte Carlo was beautiful but lonely. Maybe a little chat wouldn't hurt. "Conversation is fine, but keep it light." We talked for a while. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily. He didn't press for personal details, and I didn't offer any. As the night wore on, I realized I was actually enjoying myself. Daniel wasn't like the usual guys who tried to impress me with their wealth or connections. He had an air of someone used to the finer things but not defined by them. Eventually, the evening drew to a close. "Well, Daniel, this was unexpectedly pleasant," I said as I stood to leave. "Surprised yourself, huh?" he asked with a grin. "Maybe just a bit. Good night, Daniel." As I walked back to my apartment, his words lingered in my mind. Monte Carlo had indeed turned out to be full of surprises, and perhaps, just perhaps, I had stumbled upon one tonight. After that first encounter with Daniel, the nights in Monte Carlo seemed a bit less solitary. He had a knack for appearing wherever I was, whether I was exploring the local markets or having a late dinner by myself. His persistence wasn't annoying. Surprisingly, it was quite the opposite. Maybe because he wasn't push-shy, he just seemed genuinely interested in being around me. One breezy evening, as I watched the sun dip below the horizon, he walked over with 2 coffees in hand and sat down beside me without a word. Assuming I wanted coffee, I teased, raising an eyebrow. He handed me a cup. "If I'm wrong, I'll drink both." "Good guess," I said, accepting the coffee. We sat in silence for a bit, the sound of the waves filling the quiet moments. "You never told me what you do back in the States." Daniel finally broke the silence. "Didn't think it mattered." I shrugged. "I work. Right now, I'm just enjoying not working." "Fair enough," he chuckled. "Everyone's got a story, though, don't you think?" Over the next few days, we fell into an easy routine. Daniel showed me parts of Monte Carlo I hadn't explored yet. We talked about everything and nothing: movies, books, our favorite foods. He loved to argue about the best James Bond actor, staunchly defending Daniel Craig, while I was all about the classics like Sean Connery. One day, as we strolled along the beach, he stopped suddenly and looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen before. "Nora, I know I'm just some guy you met at a cafe, but these past weeks have been, I don't know, different. Better because of you." I stopped too, unsure how to respond. Feelings were not what I planned on dealing with here. "Daniel, I like hanging out with you. I do. But this is just a break for me. I'm not looking for complications." He nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "I get it. No pressure. Just know that I'm here, okay? And I think you're pretty amazing." Days turned into weeks, and my time in Monte Carlo was drawing to a close. Daniel and I spent more and more time together. What started as casual walks and talks turned into late-night dinners and early morning breakfasts. It was the last thing I expected, to fall for someone under the Mediterranean stars. Then one evening he dropped a bombshell. "Come back with me, Nora. Work at my company in the States. I know it's sudden, but I think it could be great." The idea was crazy, completely insane. And yet part of me was tempted by the adventure, by the idea of taking this, whatever it was, and seeing where it could go. Moving back to the States felt like stepping into an alternate universe. Daniel's offer wasn't just a job, it was an invitation into his life. Suddenly, I was living in an ordinary apartment in an ordinary part of town, playing the role of an ordinary girl who'd lucked out. My father, however, had different ideas about ordinary. He showed up unannounced one afternoon just as I was unpacking my last box. His booming laugh filled my small living room as he stood in the doorway, towering and larger than life. "Nora, hiding out in plain sight, huh?" He chuckled, giving me a hug that almost crushed my ribs. "So, tell me about this decision. This guy must be something special for you to up and move like this." His tone was light, but I could tell he was probing, doing his fatherly duty to sniff out any trouble. I sighed and sat down on the couch. "His name's Daniel. He's different, Dad. He doesn't know about all this," I said, waving vaguely around to imply the wealth and the complicated strings attached. Dad sat down next to me, his expression serious now. "Nora, you know you can't keep that a secret forever. If he's going to be part of your life, he should know who you are." "I know, Dad. I want to be sure about him before I complicate things. Thanks for looking out for me, though." He ruffled my hair, like he used to when I was a kid. "Always, kiddo. Just remember, if you need anything, I'm just a call away. And I've got eyes everywhere," he added with a wink. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of adjusting to my new job and new life. Daniel was a constant presence, supportive and charming as ever. But there was an edge to him now, a sharpness that came with the responsibilities he carried. One night, over a quiet dinner at my place, Daniel brought up a topic I'd been dreading. "Nora, when do you think I'll get to meet your parents? I feel like I'm missing a big part of your life." I paused, the weight of the moment settling over me. "Well, my mom passed away a long time ago, and my dad's just a regular trucker. We're not exactly on speaking terms right now." Daniel frowned, a hint of concern crossing his face. "I'm sorry to hear that, but whenever you're ready, I'd like to meet him. Family is important." I nodded, appreciating his sentiment, but knowing full well the reality of my father's world, a world I wasn't ready to introduce Daniel to just yet. Life with Daniel moved at a pace I never expected. We were already blending our lives together. My job at his company was going great, and our relationship was deepening. It all seemed like we were gearing up for something big, but I was still taken aback when that big moment actually happened. It was a normal evening. We were at his place, a cozy upscale apartment with views of the city skyline. We had just finished dinner, nothing fancy, just takeout because neither of us felt like cooking. We were sitting on the couch, a documentary about ocean life playing in the background, the kind you watch but don't really watch. Daniel turned to me, his expression more serious than the situation called for. He took my hand, and suddenly, I felt my heart race as Daniel took a deep breath. "Nora," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through, and everything I want for our future." I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "Yeah? I love you, Nora. I love everything about you, and I can't imagine my life without you." He paused, swallowing hard, his nervousness palpable. "That made two of us. I want to be with you always. Will you marry me?" Just like that. No kneeling, no ring box, just straightforward and genuine, just like Daniel. I barely hesitated before replying, "Yes." The word rushed out almost as a relief. "Yes, I will." His face lit up with that wide, infectious grin that had won me over from the start. He pulled me into a tight hug, and we spent the rest of the evening excitedly discussing our future, what we wanted and where we saw ourselves. It was thrilling and a bit daunting, but it felt right. The next challenge was telling my dad. I anticipated him being pleased, but his response was lukewarm at best. "Nora, you know I want nothing but your happiness," he said, his voice heavy with concern. It was thrilling and a bit daunting, but it felt right. The next challenge was telling my dad. I anticipated him being pleased, but his response was lukewarm at best. Nora, you know I want nothing but your happiness, he said, his voice heavy with concern. But are you sure about this? It's all happening so fast. I'm sure, Dad. He's a great guy. You'll see. I tried to sound more confident than I felt. He sighed. All right, but promise me you'll sign a prenuptial agreement, just to be safe. The word prenuptial didn't scare me, it was just another part of the modern marriage package, especially with someone who had as much to lose as I did, even if Daniel didn't know the full extent of it. Of course, Dad. We'll handle it, I assured him. Good then, and Nora, I won't be at the wedding. I don't want to spoil your story about being a simple girl. Next came the introduction to Daniel's mother. Her reception was icy from the start. During dinner at their family home, she scrutinized me with a look that could freeze the room. Daniel, are you sure about this girl? She doesn't seem like a fit for our family, she remarked bluntly. Daniel tried to smooth things over, but his mother was relentless. A prenuptial agreement is non-negotiable, she insisted. I agreed without hesitation, knowing it would ease some of the tension. Absolutely, I wouldn't have it any other way. Later, we formalized the terms with a lawyer present. Despite these hurdles, our wedding in the Maldives was breathtaking. Standing beside Daniel with the ocean whispering behind us and the sand beneath our feet, I felt a surge of hope. It was just us, our love, and a future we were ready to shape together. Despite the rocky start with family expectations, married life began better than I could have hoped. Daniel and I settled into our new house, a beautiful place with more space than we'd ever need. It was supposed to be the start of our perfect life together. I threw myself back into work, determined to prove that I was more than just the boss's wife. My role at the company had always been challenging, but now there was an added layer of expectations. I was not only managing projects but also involved in key decision-making processes. Initially, Daniel seemed proud. He'd introduced me in meetings with a hint of pride in his voice. This is Nora, my wife and our project lead. But as the months passed and the projects I led brought in significant profits, boosting the company's profile, something in Daniel began to shift. It was subtle at first, a comment here, a slight remark there. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, he brought it up. Nora, you're doing great at work. Maybe too great, he said, his voice strained. I looked up from my plate, puzzled. What do you mean, too great? Isn't that good for the company? It is, he admitted, pushing his food around on his plate. But the guys are starting to say it's turning into the Nora show over there. His words stung. Isn't that a bit unfair? I thought you'd be happy that we're doing well. I am happy, he said, though his tone was uncertain. But it's a lot. You know, everyone's always talking about you, about how you handle things. It makes me wonder. The conversation marked the beginning of a series of challenges between Daniel and me. As the business grew, so did the strain in our relationship. Daniel's once supportive demeanor was now changed with resentment. I couldn't comprehend why he was upset. Wasn't he the one who had encouraged me to take on more responsibility in the first place? Things took a turn for the worse when his mother came to stay with us for a few weeks. Her presence brought with it an old-world attitude that I had always managed to avoid. She made offhand remarks about my work, questioning how a wife could be so absent from home. You're always at the office, Nora. When do you have time to take care of your husband? She would say. I tried to shrug off her comments, aiming to keep the peace, but her words only deepened the growing rift between Daniel and me. It seemed that no amount of professional success could mend what was slowly unraveling at home. The more I achieved at work, the more our marriage suffered. One evening, Daniel came home with a grim expression. Nora, I think it's best if you leave the company. We need to focus on our family, and your role there is causing too much tension. Leave the company? But why? I've been contributing so much, I said, my voice a mix of disbelief and anger. It's for the best. You can focus on the house, maybe start that garden you've always talked about, he replied dismissively, as if he were deciding on something trivial rather than my career. The next day, I discovered that he had let go of all our household staff. Housekeepers, cooks, gardeners. It was all on me now. You wanted to be more involved at home. Here's your chance, he said coldly. I wasn't afraid of housework, but the way this was thrust upon me felt wrong. This wasn't the loving, caring man I had married. This was someone else, someone intolerant and controlling. His mother, who was still staying with us, seemed to relish the situation. It's good for a wife to focus on her home, she would say, smirking slightly whenever Daniel talked about my new role as a full-time housewife. As I adjusted to this unexpected turn in my life, I felt a deep sense of shame. A shame that I hadn't seen this coming. A shame to admit that maybe my father was right about Daniel. When Daniel suggested a trip to Monte Carlo to rekindle what was left of our spark, I was hesitant but hopeful. That hope quickly faded when his mother announced she would join us. It's been ages since I've traveled, she declared loudly, as if it were a decree that couldn't be opposed. Daniel welcomed her with open arms, never considering my feelings. We rented a small house in Monte Carlo, charming but costly, and it quickly became my prison rather than a retreat. From the start, Daniel and his mother treated the city as their playground. They rented luxurious cars, visited exclusive boutiques, and dined at the finest restaurants, while I was left to manage the household. They demanded home-cooked meals, reducing me to little more than a servant in our holiday home, cooking and cleaning while they enjoyed the city. As days passed, Daniel's mother's comments grew sharper, her tone more venomous. "Really, Nora? Living at someone else's expense must be quite the life," she would sneer, her words a slap disguised in a smirk. Daniel never defended me. Instead, he laughed, his laughter a betrayal that echoed around the cold walls of our temporary home. I felt isolated, the city's sparkle muted by the shadow of their disdain. One evening, we passed a grand old-style hotel, its facade a reminder of a world of elegance and respect. Daniel's mother, her voice dripping with envy, remarked, "Lucky billionaire Harris. Imagine owning such a hotel, ruling over a palace like that." That night, at a restaurant overlooking the sea, the last vestige of my patience crumbled. As we sat down, she waved the waiter over with an imperious flick of her wrist. "For Nora, the cheapest dish will do. No need to spoil her with extravagances she doesn't deserve," she declared loudly enough for the nearby tables to hear. Daniel's response was a casual chuckle, his agreement signaled not just by his words but also by a dismissive wave of his hand. "Good call, Mom. Let's not go overboard." Humiliation washed over me like the waves crashing on the rocks below. I rose from my chair, the clatter of the sea echoing my turmoil. Facing them both, my voice steadied but louder than I intended. I said, "I will not tolerate this any longer." My hands trembled, but my resolve was firm. "I'm divorcing you, Daniel." The cold air of Monte Carlo felt warm compared to the chill of betrayal as I walked away from the restaurant. Instead of apologizing, Daniel and his mother followed me with insults. As I quickened my pace, my mother-in-law's voice rang out sharply. "Just look at her, a beggar, unworthy of my son." My heart raced, but before I could get far, Daniel caught up with me and yanked my purse from my shoulder, his fingers clenching it tightly. "This is my money, Nora. Go on, get out on all fours if you have to," he said with contempt, yanking the purse away and leaving me stunned on the sidewalk. Beside him, his mother laughed cruelly, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Maybe now you'll learn to beg in Monte Carlo since that's all you're good for." Their laughter echoed down the street, leaving me feeling powerless and alone. But as they hurled their final insults, fate intervened. We were near the grand old-style hotel Daniel's mother had earlier envied. Pointing to the hotel, she sneered, "Maybe they'll let you in as a beggar." At that moment, the hotel's gates opened and a guard appeared, his face lighting up with recognition. "Miss Harris," he called out warmly, walking over with a respectful salute. The shift in the atmosphere was palpable. Daniel and his mother's expressions changed from satisfaction to confusion. The guard smiled broadly. "Your father told us you might come by. Please, this way. The best room is always reserved for you." Daniel's mother paled, her earlier bravado crumbling. "Harris?" "As in the billionaire Harris," she stammered, her voice faltering. Ignoring them both, I walked towards the guard, my posture straightening. "Thank you, Pierre," I said, my voice calm and collected. Inside, I felt a mix of relief and vindication. Behind me, Daniel's pleas began in a desperate tone. "Nora, please, I didn't mean it." His mother, not to be outdone, shouted past her son, "Perhaps we could come in for a drink at least." I didn't look back. Entering the hotel, the doors closing behind me felt symbolic, shutting out the chaos of my old life. Pierre escorted me to the reception, where the staff greeted me with the respect due to the daughter of their employer. The flight back to the United States was long, giving me ample time to contemplate my next steps. By the time I landed, my resolve had solidified like the city sidewalks, unyielding and steadfast. The following day, I found myself in the office of a reputable lawyer, papers spread out like a battle map. During your tenure at the company, it appears your husband failed to pay you bonuses owed for the multi-million-dollar deals you close, the lawyer pointed out, his tone a mix of surprise and indignation. That sounds about right, I sighed, reflecting on the countless hours I devoted to the company and the success I had driven. We're suing for $30 million. The courtroom was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the heated glares Daniel shot across the room as he fumbled through his defense. The man I once loved looked pitiful. When the verdict came, awarding me $3 million, Daniel's face crumpled. Outside the courthouse, he made one last plea. Nora, everyone's laughing at me. I messed up. Can we start over? His words might have tugged at my heartstrings once, but that time had passed. You only miss the money, Daniel. Maybe listen less to your mother next time, I said, my voice sharp against the crisp air. I turned and walked away, the sound of my heels on the pavement marking the end of that chapter. Returning home, I faced my father. The air between us was thick with unspoken words until I broke the silence. Dad, I should have listened to you. He wrapped me in a warm, forgiving hug. You had to learn on your own. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. We talked late into the night about life, mistakes, and new beginnings. His advice was a beacon as I navigated my thoughts about the future. Inspired by our conversation, I began laying the groundwork for my next venture. My experience at Daniel's company had not only honed my skills but ignited a passion for the industry I couldn't deny. I decided to open my own investment firm. With my expertise and the substantial settlement, I had the resources to start something meaningful, something mine. Weeks turned into months as I built my business from the ground up. The challenges were daunting, but every setback taught me a lesson, and every success confirmed that I was on the right path. Sitting in my new office, overlooking the bustling streets below, I realized how far I had come, from a disillusioned wife in a loveless marriage to a competent business owner. The journey had been fraught with hurdles, but each one had made me stronger.